Congratulations, Sam, on an amazing film. And I wanted to start with Laverne. You both appear in the film and you're the executive producer of Heightened Scrutiny. Talk about why you decided to get involved, and also just over a year ago, in June of 2024, 25, actually, not even a year ago, when the Supreme Court came out with its ruling, your feelings, your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. Gosh, it's wonderful to be here and for all of you to have gotten to see this incredible film. I said yes because Sam asked me to. I love Sam so much, and I think he's one of the most brilliant, amazing, caring, ethical people that I know, and I would do anything for Sam. So basically, that's why I said yes. And I love Shades Trangio, and I mean, what a warrior, what a champion he is, and Mila in this film, it's just beautifully done. And what I love about Sam's work, even when it's hard, there's humor. He has this wonderful way of making films about difficult subjects, but it manages to be entertaining and not a complete downer, which is hard when we're talking about subjects like this. I wasn't surprised by the Supreme Court's decision, but it added to just another level of devastation that I've been experiencing around anti-trans laws for, I think, like 2023, after what Dylan Mulvaney calls Beergate, and then the Target boycott that happened that year. I knew we were in trouble. I think that year there were like 500 anti-trans bills introduced in state legislatures all over the country. I think almost half the country had by that time banned gender-affirming care for young people. I knew we were screwed 2 years ago, and I was actually shooting my show Clean Slate in Savannah, and so when I was done shooting, I was kind of like, I just remember crying a lot. I cried a lot, and it felt really hopeless, and in many ways it continues to, except when I am in rooms with community and when I hear about how we are planning and taking care of each other, creating strategies that are underground to make sure that we have access to the care that we need. When I hear about organizations like Campaign Southern Equality, that for years has been providing scholarships for families, mostly in the South, to travel to other states to get gender-affirming care to expand in their state. Now they're providing scholarships for people to relocate altogether. Their work is so crucial. Those things give me hope. The recent mayoral election gave me hope. Because ultimately there needs to be an entire restructuring of our government. So much has happened this year, not just around trans issues, just around civil liberties in general, and civil rights, and the economy. It's wow. Due process. So there's a lot that has to happen, and the hope that I was just given from the inspiration that our mayor-elect inspired in the city, how many people came out and canvassed, how many people record turnout, and a message that is about bringing power back to the people, a message that's about not taking corporate money or PAC money, but like being beholden to the people. And that is the only way that we can get out of this mess in terms of, and we know that the majority of Americans want reproductive rights. The majority of Americans actually support trans rights, but we're not, what the people want is not of any concern to our politicians, both Democrats and Republicans. It's what their donors want. And so I have hope that we have a template of how we can message so that we can begin to take back power, and the damage that's just been done this year is going to take potentially a generation to undo. But I'm like,
It's about, as you're all preparing to come here today, that news alert came over the Supreme Court, another decision. The Supreme Court allowing the Trump administration to enforce a policy blocking transgender and non-binary people from choosing passport sex markers that align with their gender.
oh, that happened today. Wait, can you read that again?
Well, the Supreme Court allowed the Trump administration to enforce a policy blocking transgender and non-binary people from choosing passport sex markers that align with their gender identity. The decision by the High Court's conservative majority is Trump's latest win. It means his administration can enforce the policy while a lawsuit plays out. It holds a lower court order requiring the government to keep letting people choose male, female, or X on their passport to line up with their gender identity on new or renewed passports.
So it's blocking.
Well, Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, said, today's stay allows the government to require citizens to list their biological sex on their passport. In other words, there are two sexes, she said, and our attorneys will continue fighting for that simple truth.
That is factually incorrect. Obviously, there are intersex people. Wow. Yeah, I mean, this is the environment that we live in right now that is so deeply anti-trans. I like to refer people to Jason Stanley's book, How Fascism Works. He lists 10 components of fascism, and sort of sexual anxiety is one of them, and that obviously with the sexual anxiety has to do with, trans people fall under that category, but people with capacity for pregnancy fall under that category as well. So much of this Project 2025 project is about a Christian nationalism that is deeply patriarchal, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, racist, and so this is consistent with the agenda. So that's really disheartening, disturbing. It's one of the things that makes me want to cry because so many people out there are struggling. I hope people were able to change, during this time when we had a little reprieve, they were able to change their passports and ID documents. And we just keep fighting. And I think it's important, too, for us to remember that the government doesn't tell us who we are. The government and we as trans people, have never really. I remember changing my name, and gender marker was one of the first things I did in 1999 when I started medical transition in 98, 99. I changed all that stuff, and it's very important to me. But the government doesn't tell us who we are, and it's crucially important for us to draw from our history, our ancestors, our transcestors, and understand that we are who we say we are, no matter what the government does, and really build resilience and fortify ourselves, because when the government is criminalizing and stigmatizing you, we know statistically that kids are bullied more in states that have anti-trans bans, and it engenders a sense of shame about who we are. And so that is so crucially important to fight, that really understanding that we're beautiful, that we're anointed, that we're supposed to be here, that trans rights are human rights, that trans is beautiful, and loving ourselves in this moment, and fighting for our ability to just bask in our amazingness. We must, no matter what the government says or does.
Alexis, the Scrimeti case has huge implications for other rights and has so many parallels to the Dobbs decision, which struck down Roe 3 years ago. How are the reproductive rights and trans rights connected? What relates the attacks?
Well, I mean, first of all, Laverne, you said it so beautifully that the government doesn't get to dictate who we are, and the Supreme Court doesn't get to have the last word. And I think operating under, what we saw, can we move the flowers? I can't see. Operating under the assumption that that the government and the court are operating with facts and not a political agenda, that what they are doing is, a matter of, the chaos that they are engendering is a matter of strategy and an intent, whether it's sexual anxiety or reproductive rights anxiety, it is really about trying to pit communities against each other while they can focus on a power and control grab. So I think it's important to put the fight for trans rights and human rights connected broadly in the spectrum of reproductive freedom as a way of understanding our broad fight for freedom and democracy. And until we understand kind of how we got here and how they are linked, we aren't going to be able to both kind of fight for freedom and democracy in the same way. And I say that, as Laverne pointed out, there are 500, bans that we see now in, probably 47 states. Those same states are the states that where we saw abortion bans and bans against contraception and bans against IVF and bans against trans communities, bans against LGBTQ communities across the board. We saw them starting in earnest in 2010 when the Republicans gained power in the state houses across the country through gerrymandering that happened in the 2010 election, when the backlash against the first Obama administration coincided with the census year. I'm telling you this because we're gonna come up against the census year very quickly, and in fact, we're not even waiting for census years now to start to continue gerrymandering. But that intersection between that Tea Party Congress and that wave that took over that Congress and the way it hit all of those state houses meant that the majority of people were locked out of representation by their electeds. So the majority of people support trans rights, the majority of people support abortion rights, the majority of people support reproductive freedom writ large, and we end up with a small, loud, horrible vocal minority enacting these laws, largely in vein of a white Christian national theocracy, where they are trying to remake who we are in their vision and their image. And I think that we have to understand that this is about politics. This is about structural, taking away structural power from communities in order to dictate who we are. And so I see fundamentally our fates are linked because they're fundamentally about just pure self-determination, determining who we are, how we want to live our lives, how we see our lives and our futures and imagine them, and getting the access to the care that we need in order to do that. And I see our fight inextricably linked to the same fights. It's the same people in the same states. It used to be like, as someone said, like a Venn diagram. You could say like, here are the fights around trans rights, here are the fights around abortion rights, and in fact, it's now a circle, that Venn diagram. It's all the same people having the same fight with the same state, because it actually it's not about abortion, it's not about trans rights, it's about power, and it's about control. And that's what we need to understand in order to fight that.
May I add to that, they were also in Project 2025, and we're also seeing laws introduced in states that are attempting to ban no-fault divorce.
That's right, yes.
Right, so when you think about taking away reproductive rights, trying to ban contraception. Clarence Thomas in his concurrent decision for Dobbs, like let's ban contraception. The Congress actually voted to do that in 2022 after Dobbs. So the intersection of like ban on reproductive rights, getting rid of no-fault divorce, you can't have contraception, taking women and people who've had pregnancy back, taking us back to a time where we didn't have control over our bodies, and trans people, our beautiful freedom, us being able to say this is who I am, being for me, a very feminist thing, of being able to self-determine ourselves and like define womanhood on our own terms is a very feminist thing, and they want all that rolled back.
Yes,
so it is a deeply patriarchal project as well that is also trans-misogynist, and it's just deeply connected, and it's deeply racist. The white supremacy is so it is all deeply connected, and so this is why Ron DeSantis doesn't want the intersectionality taught in Florida, because he literally like went on a screen that just lived rent free in my brain at a press conference he had many years ago. Anyway,
but you know, I'm sorry. Can I just rip off? Because actually, I think that they are so much better at intersectionality sometimes than we are. Like they really do. Yes. I'll be in the classroom. Because they actually understand how all of these fights intersect, and the way in which they fight is to try to pit different groups against each other, right? So that we're only having conversation around trans fights without
groups that would otherwise be in
together.
allied.
Right,
yeah.
right. We're not having a conversation around income inequality. We're not having a conversation around corporate, Citizens United. We're not having a conversation around, or each of us is having our own separate conversations. But the reality is, it is the structure that undergirds them, and the people that are trying to uphold that structure of power. That is what they are trying to uphold. That to me feels like their end game. And so I feel like they're playing out intersectionality in a way that that because they've organized the structure seems to be incredible.
It's a divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
It's the divide and conquer version of
Yeah.
intersectionality.
And I think part of the power of heightened scrutiny is it's trans people speaking for themselves. It's letting people frame their own story. And I'm wondering your thoughts about how the corporate media operates today. When we talk about trans rights, when was the last time you saw a trans person on television laying out the way Chase has? I mean, that is not someone, that small circle of pundits who know so little about so much, explaining the world to us and getting it so wrong. One of the things I think this week that happened, whether or not you supported Zohran Mamdani, is this powerful fact that more than 1 million people came out. If you're wondering where people are on the spectrum, that hasn't happened in voting for mayor in New York in almost 60 years, in 1969. People want to be heard. And in the corporate media, I think those who care about LGBTQ issues, who care about war and peace, the environment, the fate of the planet, they're not a fringe minority. They're not a silent majority, but so often silenced by the corporate media. It is heightened scrutiny that breaks the sound barrier and lets people tell their own story. So I really want to congratulate Sam. I want to congratulate you, Laverne, on being a part of this incredible project. And then people, after seeing this, can make their own decisions. I also want to open up this in the last few minutes to other people who have questions or comments, and I think it's a small enough room where you can stand and just speak. But Alexis, what is the end game here? Whether we're talking about ending transition care for everyone, just this decision today in the Supreme Court declaring transgender identities invalid, the attack on reproductive rights, and how are movements organizing?
Look, I mean, I think the end game is as I said, it's about power. It's consolidation, power, and control. That is the political project and the mechanism by which this administration is descending into authoritarianism, if we're not already fully there by most measures. I think that what we see in the opposition is a bunch of strange bedfellows. You have your white nationalists, anti-black and people of color communities. You have evangelical communities that are propagating towards a state theocracy. You have a lot of people who are benefiting from tax deregulation and increasing income inequality. You have a lot of corporatists. Like there's a reason all of these communities have come together, even if they may not necessarily agree with each other, because of the benefit that they will get in being able to divide and control populations. That I just
what I would suggest though is that the benefit for if you're a working class person and across the board, you're actually not benefiting from any of this. The divide and conquer strategy is really in this environment for the wealthy and for corporations.
It is to make you think that you are aligning, right? Because there is some artificial inflation that you might get seeing people who look like you get more powerful. But the reality
people are real. I think people are realizing that. They're looking at grocery prices, they're looking at inflation, they're looking at their ability to buy a home, and they're like, none of this is getting better for me.
Makes sense. No.
And so I think, for me, I've been thinking a lot about the end game, in terms of freedom, is that for those people who are progressive and left-leaning folks, and what Mamdani models this so beautifully in a way that Bernie couldn't quite do, is that we gotta reach older Black people, right? And so Mamdani, because of who he is, and I think New York is such a diverse city, he was able to, in the primary, not quite get that Black vote in the same way he was in the general, but they kept going out and talking to the people and reaching and meeting people where they are. And I think for a lot of leftists who don't want to talk about race, and it's not that doesn't work. It just doesn't work anymore, because this project that this MAGA coalition, it is deeply white supremacist. It's deeply anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, patriarchal. It's all of those things combined. And so every one of us has to dig deep and interrogate the ways in which we've internalized white supremacy, anti-Blackness, how we've internalized patriarchy, and we don't, Bell Hooks remind us, we don't need men for patriarchy, right? So everybody internalizes these things, so it's each of our individual work to decolonize our minds so that we can actually look at our fellow human beings across race, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, and see their humanity, so that we can work together, so that we can actually have and listen, so that we can actually have this multiracial, intergenerational, working class coalition that can bring down this oligarchy. And they're using transphobia and sexism and misogyny and racism as a tool. But yes, it is about power. It is about money and control. And I think the white patriarchs want to feel, they want to feel something.
Let's take a few comments from the audience. Yes, go ahead. Why don't you stand up so everyone can hear you?
First of all, thank you, Sam, and everybody for this amazing film and this amazing discussion, and bringing these important topics to life. It's so critical. And I guess my question is, practically, what can we do?
In terms of what aspect? I think in terms of trans issues right now, I think we need films like this. People need to see the humanity of trans people. what has brought us to this moment now is a very successful dehumanization of trans people in the media. We're not all of the people talking about trans folks without trans people present. You can create this mythical trans boogie person who can just be a substitute for all of your fears and anxiety. And so we need more trans stories and more trans people's everyday trans folks stories elevated, like we see in this film. So when the film is streaming during Trans Awareness Week, let everybody know on Gather. Let everybody know that we need more trans stories. So we need to rehumanize. Like there's the process around the immigration, it's so clear the dehumanization that's happened there. And with people who, even with people who have different political beliefs, right? Like there's a dehumanization across the board. So how do we rehumanize ourselves and each other? When we dehumanize other people, we dehumanize ourselves. We really do. And so even when people have different political beliefs, we can acknowledge that this is fascism and that like we can't work with people who want our annihilation. But we don't dehumanize because and that's a tricky space to be in, right?
Right, but no, and I think what I'm hearing as well, right, is that when you dehumanize, you're creating the conditions to codify the inequality in the policy,
exactly.
Right? And so, like, ultimately, it is the storytelling, it is the, hearing directly about the lived experience of trans folk in community, because that actually helps us start to build a different narrative. We also have to fight politically. We also have to get out in the streets. We also have to understand that all of these fights are connected, right? So that, I think that is part of ensuring that whatever table you are showing up at, right, that you are both bringing in, questions and concerns about how the trans community is intersected into this fight. If you were talking about voting rights, if you're talking about abortion rights, if you're talking about income inequality, if you're talking about whatever is leading you into whatever table, wherever your political movement home is going to be, the more that we can intersect these issues and have those conversations to ensure that those tables and that infrastructure looks as inclusive as possible, that is actually what makes the difference. And the way in which we tell the stories, like watching, I was talking to Sam and Laverne outside, watching Mila, like from the beginning when she stands up at the school and you can feel her, like getting her feelings around who she is and showing up, and then watching her outside of the Supreme Court, like that scene just gave me chills thinking about who she is going to be, because she has been able to live her life as she is right now, and what that is, that platform that is going to give her that power to continue to inspire others. Like that, to me, that's an act of defiance of a society telling you that fighting exactly what you said at the beginning, right? The government trying to tell you who you are, and you standing up and telling your story and saying, this is exactly who I am. And us listening to that story is an act of testimony. It's witnessing grace. And that spirit is at work when you see that story. You understand kind of how.
And the moment for me when she did the Supreme Court, and her younger brother
is holding her. Oh my gosh. Mom is right there.
I break every time I see that, because the love.
Yes.
The love, the deep love that this child has, and from her mother who's protecting her and her baby brother. I mean, it's just so touching and beautiful, and I just never think we talk enough about love right now. We're so polarized, and everything is so vicious and mean, and the algorithm, talking about love, that doesn't pick up in these predatory algorithms, and we're so online. But love is what justice looks like in public, as Cornel West would say. It's that ethic of love, and knowing that you are loved and lovable is so crucial to just being able to move through the world as if you have a right to be here. And seeing that for Mila is what I want for every trans kid, every trans adult, every immigrant, every working class person in this country, to be able to move through the world as if they have a right to be here with dignity, with respect.
And every movement has had that and needed that, right? Every movement has needed that story, that love to rehumanize. while we're also fighting to stop
And to rehumanize ourselves, because it's so demoralizing. All of this is deeply demoralizing to watch our fellow human beings be kidnapped off the streets. It is. There aren't words, really. There are no words for the horror of what we are witnessing on a daily basis, and that's just one of them. And so then, in the face of that, we have to find ways to continue to love ourselves and find dignity, even as they try to strip us of all of that. That we have a sense of our power.
I think that's what has been, again, part of the strategy to try to convince us that we are not powerful, right? That we are not the majority, that we are not able to resist, that we must capitulate, whether that's a university or a media company or, a law firm, right?
Or a media organization giving millions of dollars in a settlement that doesn't need to be.
Exactly.
Now,
It's a mess.
Laverne, you mentioned that this film, that Heightened Scrutiny, is going to stream for Transgender Awareness Week, which is November 13th to November 19th, the one-week celebration leading up to Transgender Day of Remembrance. Where is it going to stream?
Gather, GATHR. You just go to Gather, and Sam has all the. There is a small fee. If you can't afford it, we're encouraging people who can afford it to pay it forward and pay for other people to stream the film, and just let everybody know, because there's so many of our stories just aren't getting out there, and with the story, some of the things that do get out there are just so egregious and so unfortunate. So, just let everybody know, spread the word.
Let's get another comment or question from the audience. Yes.
It's so funny because I teach gender studies in this very room every Monday. But I wanted to press on that a little bit. We can't teach gender studies in many universities and schools now across the country.
Correct.
So how do we cherish and share and distribute knowledge in a situation where institutions can't do that?
Oh, that's so devastating. I think what I remember so much about when I went to Indiana University, I transferred to Marymount Manhattan College, and I had friends at Columbia, and my brother was at the San Francisco Art Institute. My brother gave me my first Bell Hooks book. And then I started reading Bell Hooks, and it wasn't in the curriculum I was taking. I was a dance major. I was taking acting, so I got that elsewhere. So if we can have kids who are curious and develop critical thinking, so they can go out and search for this information on their own, that is crucially important. Obviously, we're not teaching enough critical thinking. Our education system is a disaster right now. But I think that's a huge part of it. If you can't get it in the classroom, get it elsewhere, which is what I did.
You could also come to Planned Parenthood. We are one of the largest, if not largest, providers of gender-affirming care, building community online and in person, and ensuring that we are showing up for everyone.
Yeah, and in the gender studies piece, there's so many basic things about sex and gender that we learned in gender studies that I would assume you teach are being challenged by our politicians, and it's just it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. We have to wrap up, but there's only 2 seconds. I mean, God, because the conflation, it's so dumb. It's so, and I used to think, it's so funny, I used to think that Gender 101 should be like a requirement for everyone.
Now I'm worried.
Yeah, that's a different world.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you both so much, and thank you for the documentary. I think I know it's so important to sort of fight against what's happening right now, and I think it's really incredible that all of you are doing that work, but I'm really curious about what your imagination of the future is. Like, what is your imagination of the future of trans bodies and of, like, people who are giving birth? Period.
A lot is happening. I mean, the future of that, I mean, there's so many people who are, despite what's going on in the government, are making determinations about their bodies. I think about all the trans men I know who are having kids and doing it proudly, and people will find access to the abortion care that they need. Often, I mean, we know the stories that are just devastating about that.
I mean, I think about it in like the 5 W's of journalism, right? I think people need to know, who they are, what they want, where they need to go to get access to care information. They need to know when to show up, and why it's nobody's damn business.
It's nobody's business. For everyone.
Like a world of self-determination that is literally nobody's damn business but your own, and that you have the access and the freedom and the ability and the power to actualize as you desire.
And a rehumanized dialogue. I think this moment, we may disagree, I think the moment when we talk about reproductive rights and we start talking about how many weeks and how many, then we're like having the conversation on the oppressor's terms.
That's right.
I think that is deeply dehumanizing. It's like, wait, there's not a person here anymore who has to I just think we have to really be super critical of how we have the conversations, and so that we're not having the conversation on the oppressor's terms, and that in ways that dehumanize us.
I agree.
So let's end where we began. Karen Strook and Sam Thader introduced this session. And Sam, I'm wondering if you can end by talking about what are your plans for this film? How is it being distributed? How can the people in this room make a difference for how it gets out there, not only in this country, but around the world?
Oh, can I take it off?
Yeah, you
Take it off.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you all. That fantastic. Our impact producer is actually Julie Allen at the back, who I thanked in the beginning but wasn't here because was running around working, who can speak at the reception in depth about our impact campaign. But what we are doing with the film is we're offering it as a tool for other people to use for the direct action they're taking. So, for example, the AG in Colorado was preparing for the conversion therapy case, and he showed our film to 15 of his staff, and then showed the film to 700 of his staff. So in ways like that, the film is being used. Also in New Hampshire, which up until very recently was the most supportive of trans people, they started turning back their bills. And so the organizers in New Hampshire are using the film to show legislators, empathic legislators, to give them talking points. So we're working on the state level to have the film change what's happening, hopefully. There's one positive bill that's actually, what's the word? Anyway, there's one positive bill out of Oregon that is combining reproductive rights, trans rights, and marriage equality, and they're pushing now to pass that forward. So the film is they're using the film to have screenings around the state to collect signatures. And then for anti-trans bills, I think one in Texas, nope, where is it?
There's several in Texas.
Missouri?
In Missouri specifically, in Colorado, they're using the film to collect signatures to push back against the anti-trans bills. So those are the ways in which, up to this point, the film only came out 10 months ago. I think we've had over 100 screenings at this point, but we are pounding the pavement because our rights are being taken away day by day. And so, to your question, just stand up for us. If you ever hear someone say, well, I like trans people, but it's that but that you gotta just stop, cut them off. We are people, we are humans, we're not hurting anybody. It's that's what we need. We just need everyone else to stand up for us.
May I add to that? I often hear, but children is nobody's business. If you're not a trans kid, parent of a trans child, or no, it's not your business. Not your business. When it comes to with women's sports, there's like less than 10 trans athletes. Girl. It's really girl, like, so, yeah.
Well, we're going to continue this discussion outside. We're going to hear more about the Impact campaign there. Thank you so much for coming out. Oh, and tune into Democracy Now!